He thought he was saving a child. What he didn't know was that she was saving something far older, far more fragile and far more dangerous to reveal. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. Arizona Territory, 1885. The midday sun cast harsh shadows across the dusty streets of Tucson as Dr. James Thornton made his way to the military outpost. At 42, the former Army physician had seen enough bloodshed during the Civil War to last several lifetimes. Now he preferred the quiet life of a frontier doctor, tending to the townspeople's ailments and occasionally consulting for the military. Dr. Thornton, Captain Reynolds greeted him at the gate. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "What's so urgent, Captain?" James asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Apache raid on a settler family 3 days ago. The only survivor is a girl, maybe 10 years old. She hasn't spoken a word since we found her." James followed the captain through the compound to a small room. In the corner, a small figure huddled beneath a blanket despite the heat. Dark eyes peered cautiously from beneath matted black hair. "Hello there," James said softly, kneeling at a respectful distance. "My name is Dr. Thornton. I'm here to help you." The girl's gaze remained unwavering, suspicious, but she made no sound. "Has she eaten anything?" James asked the soldier standing guard. "Barely touches the food, sir." James studied the child. Though filthy and frightened, she showed no obvious physical injuries. "I'd like to take her with me," he told the captain. "Take her? Where?" "To my home. She needs care, not confinement." "She's Apache," Reynolds said flatly. "Could be dangerous. Besides, what would people say about a bachelor taking in an Indian child?" "I don't give a damn what people say," James replied. "And she's a child, not a prisoner of war." After lengthy negotiations and paperwork declaring him temporarily responsible for the girl, James led her to his wagon. She followed without resistance, but maintained her silence. "I know you understand me," he said as they rode toward his modest house on the outskirts of town. "You don't have to talk until you're ready, but you're safe now." At home, James's housekeeper, Mrs. Abigail Crawford, a widow in her 60s, gasped at the sight of them. "Lord above, James, what have you brought home?" "A patient who needs our help, Abigail." The old woman's expression softened. "Poor little thing. She needs a bath and proper clothes." She approached slowly, extending her hand. "Come, child." To James's surprise, the girl took Abigail's hand and allowed herself to be led away. Later that evening, transformed by soap and clean clothes, the girl sat at James's table, watching him cautiously as he prepared a simple meal. "You need a name," he said conversationally. "At least until you tell me your real one." He thought for a moment. "How about Sarah?" "That was my mother's name." The girl gave no indication she cared one way or another. "Sarah it is, then," James decided. "Tomorrow we'll get you some more clothes." That night, he checked on her before retiring. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling. "Good night, Sarah," he said quietly. For just a moment, he thought he saw her lips move in response, but no sound came. Over the next few weeks, Sarah remained mute, but began to adapt to life in James's home. She helped Abigail with chores and sometimes accompanied James on his rounds when patients weren't too intimidating. Not everyone in Tucson appreciated the doctor's charity case. James heard the whispers when they went to town cruel remarks about savages and his peculiar interests in the child. One afternoon, while purchasing supplies at the general store, the owner's son, a brute named Frank, blocked their path. "Ain't right, Doc," he sneered. "Keeping an Apache like a pet. Her people probably killed your neighbors." "Step aside, Frank," James said evenly. "Or what? You going to let your little savage attack me?" James felt Sarah tense beside him. "She's a child who survived something terrible. Show some human decency." "Indians ain't humans, Doc. Everyone knows that." James's patience snapped. "And yet she shows more humanity than you. Move aside, or I'll inform your father why I'm taking my business elsewhere." Frank reluctantly stepped back. but not before spitting at their feet. As they rode home, James noticed Sarah watching him intently. "Not everyone thinks like Frank," he explained, "but many do. It's wrong, and I'm sorry you had to hear that." That night, James woke to muffled sounds. Following them to Sarah's room, he found her crying in her sleep, murmuring words he couldn't understand. "Sarah," he called softly, touching her shoulder. She woke with a start, eyes wide with terror. "It's just a dream," he assured her. "You're safe." She stared at him, then did something unexpected. She pointed to herself and whispered, "Nasha, Nasha?" James repeated, "Is that your name?" She nodded almost imperceptibly. "It's beautiful," he said, smiling. "Thank you for telling me, Nasha. It was the beginning of trust, but only the beginning." The following day, she retreated back into silence, as though regretting her moment of vulnerability. 2 months passed. Autumn brought cooler temperatures to the Arizona territory, and with it, subtle changes in Nasha. Though still silent most days, she had begun to communicate through gestures and occasional nods. James kept a journal of her progress, noting her reactions to different situations and people. "She's intelligent," he told Abigail one evening while Nasha was asleep. "Watches everything, learns quickly. I believe she understands English perfectly. Then why doesn't she speak it?" Abigail wondered. "I'm not certain. Trauma, perhaps, or—" James hesitated. "Maybe she chooses not to." The following week, James received an unexpected visitor. Colonel William Harrison, a former colleague from his Army days, arrived unannounced. "James, good to see you, old friend," Harrison boomed, dismounting from his horse. "William, what brings you to Tucson?" James asked, surprised but pleased. "Military business. Establishing a new outpost to manage the Apache situation." His eyes drifted to where Nasha stood in the doorway. "And I've heard interesting rumors about you." Inside, over coffee, Harrison spoke candidly. "The Army is gathering Apache children for the new Indian school in Santa Fe. They'll be taught English, Christianity, proper trades." James felt a cold dread. "And you're here for Nasha. That's her name? Interesting. Captain Reynolds mentioned you had taken in an Apache girl." Harrison leaned forward. "This is for the best, James. These children need proper American education to survive in the changing West." "She's doing fine here," James said firmly. "Is she speaking English yet?" "She doesn't speak at all." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "All the more reason she needs proper schooling. The program has government funding now. They're building schools across the territories. To erase who they are," James said quietly. "To give them a future," Harrison countered. "The old ways are dying, James. You know that." After Harrison left with a promise to return, James found Nasha hiding in the storeroom, her eyes reflecting fear. "You heard," he said, sitting beside her. "I won't let them take you, Nasha, but we need to show them you're learning here." That night, as James sat on the porch contemplating their options, Nasha appeared beside him. She held his medical journal and a pencil. To his astonishment, she carefully wrote in the margin, "No school. You can write?" James exclaimed. She nodded, then wrote, "Little. Who taught you?" After a long pause, she wrote, "Mission," then quickly added, "Bad place." James understood then. Her silence wasn't inability but resistance. "You don't have to go to their school," he promised. "But maybe you could learn more here with me." The next day, James began teaching Nasha at home. She proved a quick study with writing and arithmetic, though she maintained her silence. Occasionally, late at night, he would hear her whispering to herself in her native language, but she would stop immediately if she sensed his presence. One evening, a severe case called James away, a difficult childbirth at a ranch 10 miles outside town. He left Nasha with Abigail, promising to return by morning. "Be good for Mrs. Crawford," he told her. "I'll be back before you know it." The birth was complicated, lasting through the night. By the time James started home, he was exhausted, having delivered twins safely, but with considerable difficulty. He was halfway home when he spotted smoke on the horizon coming from the direction of his house. Panic seized him. He urged his horse faster, arriving to find his home partially engulfed in flames. Neighbors had formed a bucket line, fighting the blaze. "Abigail! Nasha!" he shouted, leaping from his horse. "James!" Abigail emerged from the crowd, face smudged with soot. "Thank God you're here. What happened? Where's Nasha?" "Inside still," Abigail cried. "I couldn't find her when the fire started. The men checked but couldn't get to her room." Without hesitation, James wrapped a wet cloth around his face and rushed into the burning house. Smoke blinded him as he navigated the familiar layout, calling Nasha's name. He found her not in her bedroom, but in his study, clutching something to her chest. "Nasha!" He coughed, reaching for her. To his shock, she spoke, her voice raspy from smoke and disuse. "Grandfather's words," she said in halting English, holding up a small bundle wrapped in leather. There was no time to process this revelation. James scooped her up and stumbled toward the door as a beam crashed behind them. They emerged into the morning air, both coughing violently as neighbors rushed to help. Later, as they sat wrapped in blankets watching the last flames being extinguished, James examined what Nasha had risked her life to save, a small leather pouch containing a journal written in unfamiliar symbols. "What is this?" he asked gently. "Apache words," she whispered, her voice still strange to his ears. "My grandfather was medicine man. He teach me to read our language. You can read and write Apache?" She nodded. Not a loud admission. They beat children who speak Apache. Understanding dawned on James. "So you stopped speaking altogether. Words are sacred," she explained haltingly. "English words take Apache words away." James looked at the smoldering ruins of his home, then at the child beside him. "Your words are safe with me, Nasha. I promise." In town, rumors spread quickly about the fire's cause. Some blamed faulty wiring. Others suggested it was divine punishment for harboring an Apache child. A few whispered about arson. The banker, Mr. Peterson, offered James temporary lodging in a vacant property he owned. "It's not much, but it'll keep you sheltered until you rebuild." "Thank you," James said, surprised by the generosity. "Don't thank me," Peterson replied awkwardly. "My wife insisted. Said no child should be homeless no matter where they come from." That night, in their temporary shelter, Nasha approached James with her grandfather's journal. "I teach you," she said simply. "Apache words." James smiled. "And I'll keep teaching you English. But you speak only when you want to, understand? Your language is yours to protect." For the first time since he'd known her, Nasha smiled back. Winter arrived in the Arizona territory, bringing cool nights and clear days. In their temporary home, James and Nasha established new routines. Each morning, they practiced reading and writing, English for her, Apache for him. James found the language fascinating but challenging, with sounds his tongue struggled to form. "No," Nasha would correct him, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Listen again." She would repeat words slowly, patiently, as he had done for countless patients over the years. They kept these lessons private. Nasha still rarely spoke in public, and James understood why. When Colonel Harrison returned in December, they were prepared. "I'm impressed, Thornton," Harrison admitted, reviewing the girl's English workbooks. "Her writing is quite good." "She's very intelligent," James replied. "Learns quickly." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "But she still doesn't speak?" "Selective mutism," James explained, using medical terminology deliberately. "A psychological condition following trauma. Forcing speech could cause significant setbacks." He showed Harrison detailed records of Nasha's progress, carefully excluding any mention of their Apache lessons. Instead, he emphasized her mathematics skills and reading comprehension. "I'm her legal guardian now," James added, producing the papers he'd filed with the territorial court. "Judge Wilson signed the adoption papers last week." Harrison seemed taken aback. "You've adopted her? Permanently?" "Yes, she's my daughter now." The colonel frowned. "That's unusual, James." "Perhaps, but it's legal and binding." After Harrison left, visibly displeased but without grounds to object, Nasha tugged at James's sleeve. "Father?" she asked quietly, testing the word. James felt a lump in his throat. Only if you want, he said. You had a father before me. I would never try to replace him. She considered this. 2 fathers, she finally decided. One in stars now. One here. As they rebuilt their lives, the community's attitude gradually shifted. Some neighbors remained hostile, but others began to accept Nasha's presence, particularly after she helped James tend to the blacksmith's son following a workshop accident. She's got gentle hands, the blacksmith told others. Steady like the dock. Spring brought new challenges. A telegram arrived from Santa Fe. Officials would be inspecting all indigenous children not enrolled in government schools. The assimilation program was expanding. We'll face them together, James assured Nasha. Your progress will speak for itself. But privately he worried. The territorial government was increasingly aggressive in its policies toward Native Americans. Even with adoption papers, he might not be able to protect her forever. One evening, as Nasha practiced writing, a knock came at their door. James opened it to find Thomas Red Hawk, a Cherokee man who worked as interpreter for the territorial government. Dr. Thornton, he said formally, may I speak with you? Inside, Red Hawk explained his visit. Word has spread about the Apache girl who lives with the white doctor. Some say you're teaching her to read her people's language. James tensed. Who says this? It doesn't matter. What matters is that I believe you're doing something important. Red Hawk leaned forward. The schools are destroying our languages. When a language dies, a whole way of seeing the world dies with it. What do you want from us? James asked cautiously. To help, Red Hawk replied. There are others, teachers, interpreters, even a few sympathetic government agents working secretly to preserve native languages. We collect writings, stories, create teaching materials that can be hidden. He produced a small book from his jacket, Apache Grammar and Vocabulary, recorded by a missionary who disagreed with the government's policies. He was sent back east for his troubles. James accepted the book carefully. This is dangerous work you're doing. So is what you're doing, Red Hawk pointed out. Teaching an Apache girl her own language while the government tries to erase it. That night, after Red Hawk left, James showed Nasha the book. There are others, he told her. People working to save your language. Her eyes widened as she examined the pages. More Apache words, she whispered reverently. Your grandfather's journal and this book, they're important, Nasha. They're keeping your people's voice alive. Over the following weeks, they incorporated the new material into their lessons. Nasha began recording her own stories, legends her grandfather had told her, memories of her family, descriptions of Apache ceremonies and beliefs. James realized she was creating something precious, a bridge between worlds, preserved in written form. Their peaceful routine was shattered in late April when 3 government inspectors arrived without warning. James was seeing patients in town when Abigail rushed into his office. They're at the house, she panted. Government men, asking for papers, demanding to see how the girl is being educated. James hurried home to find Nasha sitting stiffly at the table while 3 suited men examined their home. One was methodically going through James's bookshelf. Gentlemen, James said sharply, I don't recall inviting you to search my home. Dr. Thornton, the eldest man turned. I'm Superintendent Walsh from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We're conducting an assessment of all indigenous children in private custody. I have legal adoption papers, James stated, retrieving the documents from his desk. Yes, unusual, but apparently in order, Walsh conceded after examining them. However, we're also mandated to ensure proper American education. The inspector at the bookshelf held up Red Hawk's Apache language book. What's this, doctor? James felt a cold dread but kept his expression neutral. Research material. I'm documenting traditional Apache medicinal practices. Purely academic interest. Walsh's eyes narrowed. And these? He indicated several pages of Nasha's Apache writing on the desk. Before James could respond, Nasha spoke clearly in English. My father is teaching me science. Those are plant names for medicine. The inspector seemed startled to hear her speak. Walsh recovered quickly. I thought the girl was mute. Selective mutism, James explained again. She speaks when she feels safe. The youngest inspector, who had remained silent until now, approached Nasha. Can you read for us, child, from this book? He offered an English primer. Nasha read several paragraphs flawlessly, her accent barely noticeable. James felt a surge of pride mixed with relief. After further questioning and inspection of her English workbooks, the men seemed satisfied, though Walsh remained suspicious. We'll be monitoring her progress, he warned as they prepared to leave. The program has standards that must be met. She exceeds any standard you might set, James replied confidently. That evening, after ensuring they were alone, James embraced Nasha. You were very brave today. I was scared, she admitted. But I remembered what you said about my words being mine to protect. Your quick thinking protected both our words, James said. But we must be more careful now. They'll be watching us. Nasha nodded solemnly. We hide the books? Yes, and continue our lessons in secret. Some things are too important to lose. As they carefully gathered their Apache materials, James reflected on how much had changed. He had taken in a silent, traumatized child, only to discover she carried something precious. A language, a culture, a heritage fighting to survive. And now somehow he had become part of that fight. Nasha, he said gently, what does your name mean in Apache? She smiled, a rare full smile that transformed her solemn face. It means owl, she replied. Grandfather said owl sees in darkness when others cannot. James nodded. A perfect name for you. You see what must be preserved when others would let it disappear into darkness. Summer, 1886 arrived with scorching heat and tension in the territory. News spread of Geronimo's final campaign, and with it came increased hostility toward anything Apache. James noticed people watching Nasha more closely when they ventured into town, their gazes heavy with suspicion. Keep your head up, he would tell her quietly. You've done nothing wrong. At home, their secret work continued. Nasha had filled 3 notebooks with Apache stories, words, and songs. James had become reasonably proficient in reading the language, though his pronunciation still made Nasha laugh. One hot afternoon, Thomas Red Hawk visited again, his expression grave. Geronimo's surrender is imminent, he informed them. When it happens, there will be a crackdown. All Apache children will be removed to boarding schools, adopted or not. They can't do that, James protested. I have legal guardianship. Laws change, Doctor, or are selectively enforced. Red Hawk glanced at Nasha, who listened intently. I've come to warn you, but also to ask something important. He turned to Nasha directly. The writings you've created, they preserve knowledge that might otherwise be lost. Would you allow us to make copies for safekeeping? Nasha looked to James, then back to Red Hawk. Who will read them? Today, perhaps few. But someday, when times change, your people will seek their language again. These records will be waiting. After consideration, Nasha nodded. Yes, words should live. Red Hawk smiled. Thank you. Our network has a printing press in Albuquerque. We can produce small books that can be hidden, shared secretly. Will it be dangerous? James asked. Everything worth doing has risk, Red Hawk replied simply. They arranged for Nasha's notebooks to be transported to Albuquerque, carefully copied, and returned. In the meantime, she continued recording new material, working with increased urgency. In August, news arrived of Geronimo's surrender. Within days, government notices appeared throughout the territory. All Apache children were to be registered for placement in approved schools or homes. They cannot have you, James said firmly as they discussed their options. We could leave the territory, go east perhaps. Running shows guilt, Nasha replied, her English now fluent though still accented. I want to stay and fight. It might not be a fight we can win, not right now. Nasha considered this. Grandfather said sometimes the wind bends the tree, but the tree's roots stay strong. Before they could decide, Superintendent Walsh returned with 2 armed soldiers. He carried official papers. "Dr. James Thornton," he announced formally. "By order of the territorial governor, all Apache minors are to be placed in government-approved educational facilities. I have orders to escort the girl, known as Sarah Thornton, to the Phoenix Indian School immediately." James blocked the doorway. "Her name is Nasha, and she's my legally adopted daughter." "These orders supersede any prior arrangement," Walsh stated coldly. "Step aside, doctor." "I'll appeal to the courts," James insisted. "You're welcome to try. The girl comes with us today." Walsh signaled the soldiers. Nasha stepped forward before James could protest further. "I will go," she said clearly. "Nasha, no." James was shocked. She looked at him steadily. "Remember, the owl sees in darkness. Trust me, father." Reluctantly, James helped her pack a small bag, slipping one of her journals inside with her clothing. As Walsh led her to the waiting wagon, the entire street watched in uncomfortable silence. "I'll come for you," James promised. "This isn't over." For 3 days, James petitioned officials, telegraphed contacts in Tucson and Phoenix, and prepared legal arguments. On the 4th morning, Thomas Red Hawk appeared at his door. "She's gone," he said without preamble. "What do you mean, gone?" James demanded. "Escaped from the Phoenix school last night, along with 4 other Apache children." James sat heavily. "Where would they go?" "Not where you're thinking," Red Hawk said. "She's too smart for that. They won't head for Apache territory. That's the first place they'll look." That night, unable to sleep, James heard a soft scratching at his back door. He opened it to find a young Apache boy, no more than 12. "Nasha sends words," the boy whispered, handing him a folded paper. The note was written in Apache, which James slowly translated. "Father, I am safe. Others helped us. Remember, the owl flies silent at night. When moon is dark again, look for me where we first spoke my true name. Trust no one but Red Hawk." For 2 weeks, James maintained his public campaign for Nasha's return, deliberately drawing attention while privately preparing for her arrival. He arranged for supplies, secured documents, and consulted with Red Hawk about safe routes eastward. On the night of the new moon, James waited in Nasha's old room, the place where she had first whispered her name to him after her nightmare. Shortly after midnight, a shadow moved outside the window. Nasha slipped inside, thinner but unharmed. Behind her came 2 more children. "These are my cousins," she explained quickly. "Their parents died in the same raid as mine. They were sent to different schools." "We need to move quickly," James said, embracing her briefly. "Red Hawk has arranged transportation." "Not yet," Nasha insisted. "There's something I must show you first." She led him to the storeroom where she had once hidden. Lifting a floorboard, she revealed a cavity containing several small books. The printed copies, James realized. They returned them. Not just copies. Red Hawk's people made many. They're being distributed secretly to trusted keepers. She handed him one. "This one is yours, to remember." James opened it to find Apache text alongside English translation, Nasha's stories, her grandfather's wisdom, and basic language instruction. "This is what they fear," he said softly. "Not you, but this, the survival of your voice." "Words outlive people," Nasha replied. "Grandfather taught me that. Now many will keep our words safe." By dawn, they were traveling east with Red Hawk's help, using back roads and sympathetic contacts. Their destination was Colorado, where a Quaker community had agreed to shelter them. The children's Apache books were carefully hidden among medical texts. One evening, as they camped in a secluded canyon, Nasha sat beside James watching the stars. "When I came to your house, I thought I must keep silent to protect my grandfather's words," she said thoughtfully. "I didn't understand then that words grow stronger when shared." "You were wise to be cautious," James replied. "But you're right, what's hidden can be lost. What's shared can live forever." Nasha nodded toward the sleeping children. "They will learn both languages now. English for the changing world, Apache for the world we must not forget." James put his arm around her shoulders. "And someday, when times change again, these books will be waiting. The owl sees in darkness what others cannot. the path forward that honors what came before. We are like the books now, Nasha said, smiling. 2 languages in 1 story. As they continued their journey eastward, James realized they had become something neither of them had expected: guardians, not just of each other, but of something larger. The right of a people to keep their voice alive through their words, their stories, their very language. In saving Nasha, he had helped save something irreplaceable. And she, in her silent resistance and eventual trust, had taught him that true healing sometimes meant protecting what others sought to erase. The cultural heritage and identity that made each person whole. 2 languages, 1 story, he repeated, watching the first light of dawn touch the eastern horizon. I like that, Nasha smiled, pointing to the rising sun. New day, she said first in English, then repeated in Apache, Eshehi Hajeyu. Together, they walked toward the light.